What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on, everybody? Well, you're probably listening to this on a Wednesday, recording this on Tuesday afternoon, and a lot of stuff going on around the league quarterback-wise. I put out a video yesterday when the news broke about Bryce Young being benched. You can go check that out. We're not going to talk about that today. But Tua was placed on IR. Justin Fields essentially named the starter for definitely this week. And I want to discuss pretty clear where this thing's going. And the rookie quarterbacks, because there were some stats today floating around on the internet. Something I've been thinking about kind of hit me at the gym because there was, we'll dive into if the Bears would like a redo for a moment in the draft, not with Caleb, but with another draft pick. Brian Flores, who was in the news with the Tua comments about a month ago or during training camp, I think is a pretty fascinating head coaching candidate to keep an eye on because he's clearly the best defensive coordinator in the NFL right now, who's not a head coach like a D'Amico Ryans. And Kauff on campus. We're going to do this every Wednesday where we just fly around 5 topics, 5 questions. And I love college football. I watch all day on Saturday, so we're going to discuss it here on a weekly basis. And we'll have a mailbag out a little bit later today. But speaking of college, whenever, on Instagram, I often get these incredible reels from these stadiums in college. And one of the coolest ones is when they play Dixieland Delight at Alabama. And the student section, which now feels like the entire stadium, adds their little song in between the lines. And it's just awesome, especially at night with all the phones out. And if you want to go to one of these big-time college games, we're getting into conference play, so the matchups are going to be incredible. Obviously, the NFL. Feel for all my Eagles fans that were at the link. And I've made that walk out of that stadium after some bad L's. It's tough, but going to games is really fun. And there's nothing like leaving a stadium, watching your team get a win, especially at home with all your people. It's a great communal experience. Concerts, comedy shows, my friends, my partners, the official ticketing app of this podcast, Game Time, they have you covered. Download the app because take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. It's official. Tua is out for a minimum 4 games. He got put on short-term IR, which is something that has been developed over the last 6-7 years, changed a lot. Historically, back in the day, hell, even when I was in the league, you went on IR, you were gone. I love this addition of the ability to put guys on short-term IR just in general. And I think the Tua thing's fascinating because we all universally agree. Watching him lay on the ground as a human being is very, very difficult. And the fencing with his arms that has now happened several times, it is a gut check moment. You feel for the human being. You feel like it's really, really hard to watch. And my initial take when it happened was I wasn't going to grandstand. And it's the most predictable thing ever when that happened, that everybody universally said to retire. And I don't think they're really making it up, but it was very predictable. And it's pretty clear that in the history of the NFL, most guys that are 26 years old don't quit easy. And all reports, now I don't know if we'll see him talk, because when you're on IR, you are not obligated to talk like you are as a starting quarterback. The head coach will and other players will, but we'll see if Tua gets behind a mic over the next couple weeks and says how he truly feels. But all reports is he does not plan to retire, which is the least shocking thing to me. Though, like, if he retired, I wouldn't blame the guy. If you ask me, like, what should you do? And I look today, he's made $73 million. That counts his rookie contract, which was all guaranteed as the number 5 pick, and then the signing bonus that he made from this new deal, which is paid over a period of time, but he's already received over $40 million. So as of today, he's made $73 million. And I think the media does a really poor job of this when they talk generational wealth. Like where I come from, $73 million, especially when you factor in Florida, no state income tax, that is generational wealth. And Tua's with a top agency. He's with high-level financial guys. I'm sure they have him well invested. That is setting up family members, your wife, your kids for life. So he's made generational wealth. But give or take, if he were to retire, the guarantees on the contract could become problematic for him to receive. And historically, teams, have battled that when it comes to retirements. Guys have had to pay money back and not receive money coming. And for the money that he is still owed just on the guaranteed, my math could be off a little bit, but it's like $125 million. So it's very, very easy for everyone to say, quit, don't do this. And I don't blame people for saying that, but I don't know if that's realistic. And the moment that happened, I didn't think the next day he's like, I'm done. Even though you saw Antonio Pierce, which I thought was very genuine, former player at a really high level, said if I was talking to him, I would recommend stop playing. But I also think perspective and the way you look at life, like I'm 39 years old. I look at life, I'm a completely different human than I was at 26 years old. Sometimes I think back when I see memories come up on social media to high school or college. Like I don't even know if I would be able to relate to the person I was at that age, let alone 26, honestly, 30 years old. Hell, I'm dramatically different, I feel, than when I was 35 years old. And I'm not talking morals. I'm not talking, your core values as a human being. I'm just talking about the way you look at life. As you age, you should change. So it's very easy for older people to have an opinion that they have on this situation. He's 26 years old. The other thing is like $73 million, like I said, game-changing money. Think about successful people if you've ever been around these type of people that started a company and maybe sold one. I've known a couple people, family, friends growing up, that sold it for like $20, $30 million. It's like they hit the fucking jackpot. They made their kids partners. Everyone got rich. So and we're talking $10, $20 million. That's in California. So you're talking in the state of Florida with how much money he's made. Like it's a lot, but there's still a lot coming. And I'm not saying the only reason he would come back is simply for the money, but that has to factor in. Like this is America. And the reason these guys play football is because it's a business and there's a lot of money to be made and it complicates the situation. Now, my take last week when it happened, I thought like the Dolphins can do whatever they want. Tua can do whatever they want, but there's no way on God's green earth that come Thursday or Wednesday, they can expect, oh, he's cleared from protocol. The league was going to get involved. And I'm not saying that they did. Maybe it was just an easy one. The neurologist said like, hey, we just need a couple weeks before we can even assess this. But this was an easy move for everyone involved. Put him on injury reserve, take a deep breath. But what happens after 4 weeks? What happens if the neurologist, I saw a video go viral of Steve Young talking to Dan Patrick. And he said, it's hard for me to relate to some people with concussions because mine, it wasn't like a week later I couldn't remember my wife's name or what street I lived on or what plays we called. I would get a concussion and really by lunchtime the next day, I felt completely fine and it didn't impact my memory. So he's like, I can't relate when some of these people and even some of these former players come up to me and ask these questions. Like that didn't happen to me. So, and he's like, the reality with these neurologists, and this is the way with most doctors in situations where there's not like a concrete answer. It's like, well, I would recommend, I think this is the best course of action, but it's not like, hey, my dad had pancreatic cancer. If you don't attempt to, get some treatment on this immediately, you're going to die. It's black and white. It ain't going away. As Steve Young said, the brain is like really the last frontier of medicine that there are still a ton of questions on. And I would just expect Tua not simply for the money, but that has to play a big factor. He's 26 years old, uh, to not retire or not want to retire. And I think this is where the league and the Dolphins, they're all going to be put in precarious situations because the contract, it feels dirty talking about. Mike Florio wrote about it. And he's like, simply because the contract's so big, this is going to have to be a discussion. Because if he is cleared, then and he wants to play, like he's due that cash. So if they're not allowing him to play, how that works, like they got to pay him. And if they just say, okay, he wants to play, he's technically cleared and throw him out, and this happens again, it's going to be an awful look because we all see it coming. It feels inevitable for it to happen again. Because let's face it, that hit, I don't want to say it was like innocuous, like barely happened, but it was. How often do you see that level tackle against running backs and wide receivers throughout a Sunday? Every other play? It wasn't some huge Ray Lewis, Dick Butkus depletion. Jalen Hurts was taking bigger collisions last night. And I don't pretend to be some medical expert here, but it's pretty clear the first concussion you have, the more susceptible you are to the next one and the next one, and it grows and grows. Now, I think there's a numbness with us to football that this is going to sound, I don't know, insensitive. I don't know if the casual fan cares that much. Like they don't want to see anyone laying there like that, but like it's not going to affect the way we watch football. It's not going to affect the way we discuss football. The Chiefs Bengal game, Sunday afternoon. Now the way that they count the amount of people that watch has changed over time because they count bars and restaurants now. Had 28 million people watching. So it's going to be fascinating to watch this play out. And I would expect the league to be very, very active, but owners didn't get rich randomly. You know, this is going to be a situation like if I'm going to pay him $120 more million, like, and he's cleared to play, I would imagine the Dolphins like, let him play. They did it before. Why wouldn't they do it again? Touchdowns, TD, Huddy, taking it to the house, in for 6. I like to call it a tug. Whatever you call touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, we do not care how you score them. We just want to bet touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? I know I do it all the time. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month NFL Plus Premium. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Justin Fields at 2-0, and he's played pretty well. I think he's looked better than he did in Chicago. He made a couple really good throws last week that were called back. One throw to Pickens might be one of the best throws he's ever made as a pro. Was called back on a holding play. It was great. He rolled right, hit him in stride. Pickens did a sweet little dance. Then he looked, realized there's a flag. I think he's got a little wiggle room now. Like coming into this season, I thought no one was on scholarship. Russell was not going to get a long leash. Fields would not have a long leash if he came in after. Like he can mix and match. They're paying both guys a total of like $2.5 million. Paying them nothing. Maybe they're actually paying Fields a little more because they traded for the contract. But relative to other quarterbacks, their quarterback room with these two guys is nothing because Denver's paying the freight on Russell Wilson. Once you start 2-0, though, and you have been managed the game pretty well, he's getting more than one bad game before they're going to Russell Wilson. Now, is he getting 3? Probably not. But they get the Chargers this week at home. That's going to be a pretty good matchup. That's got 15-13 written all over it. But let's just say they win that game. And he plays exactly like he has the first couple weeks. Defense dominates. They get some field goals. Maybe they score 1 touchdown. He just plays under control. Doesn't throw for more than 150 yards, but doesn't turn the ball over. Makes a couple plays with his legs. You start 3-0. Like, I think his leash only grows. Again, you build momentum with the guys you're playing with. You bring an athletic ability that at this point in time, Russell just does not. You have no problem throwing the ball down the field. The knock on Justin, well, he doesn't really work the middle of the field. Well, neither does Russell Wilson. So I would say Justin Fields, unless the wheels just fall off over like a 3-week span, is going to be the Steelers quarterback for the foreseeable future. And they get Chargers at home this week, which is just going to be an old school slug it out game. Then they go to Indy. Then they play the Cowboys on Sunday night. Now, games on primetime television just have more eyeballs on them because there's no distractions, right? You play Thursday night, Sunday night, or Monday night, you're not competing against the rest of the slate. So that game, especially against the Cowboys, is going to be under a microscope. But let's just say they go 1-1 over these next two games. They'll be 3-1 going into that game. I do think there's probably a coin flip chance that if they beat the Chargers at home, at Indy is not a good matchup for Anthony Richardson. Against that defense, do not like that one at all. What if they're 4-0 going into that game? Even if he plays like shit and they lose, okay, you're 4-1. You have a 3-game cushion on even being 500. We're talking about the Steelers as a couple wins away from being like a borderline lock playoff team. So Fields, I don't want to say he's made the most of his opportunity because he hasn't done that much, but he's done everything he's needed to do. And the more confidence he gets with the head man, Russell Wilson's going to be a $40 million on the Denver Broncos accounting sheet backup. Saw a stat today that none of the rookie quarterbacks have thrown a touchdown. Now, we've only played 2 games, but clearly it hasn't gone well. Bo Nix has been abysmal. Caleb Williams has really struggled for the hype. And Jaden Daniels kind of right now is just a runner, which he's good at, but he's got to learn the slide or he's going to get killed. But the hype on these guys, for what we've seen, let's face it, has been a little underwhelming. But all these teams were in tough spots, right? Washington, their roster sucked. They had the number 2 overall pick. Like, it's not like you get 3 first-rounders. It is what it is. You take a quarterback. It's not like you get to pick other players. Same thing with the Broncos. They had a limited amount of draft capital because of the moves that they have made over the years. And they picked Bo Nix, and their team's not that good. But the Bears were in a unique situation. They had 2 top 10 picks. Obviously, you take Caleb every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Like, that's the right pick. But they had the 9th pick. And it was pretty fascinating, the discourse between who they were going to take. Should they take a defensive lineman? Should they take one of the wide receivers? It doesn't feel like there was that much talk about an offensive lineman. And I go back and I think about Jim Harbaugh, who last year leading up to the end of the season, it was pretty clear Jim Harbaugh wanted to come back to the NFL, right? Was inevitable. Jim Harbaugh was going to be an NFL coach. And it was like, should the Bears just, I don't know, fire Eberflus and hire Jim Harbaugh? Now, clearly, that came and went. Jim Harbaugh's now with the Chargers. But then there was a lot of talk leading up to the draft. Would Jim Harbaugh take Malik Nabers or Marvin Harrison? And then he drafts Joe Alt and says in the press conference on Thursday night, we were never going to take anyone else but Joe Alt. And we view the offensive linemen as the tip of the spear. We view them as offensive weapons. And through the 2 weeks, what's going on? Pretty sure J.K. Dobbins is leading the NFL in rushing. And they are pounding people. Why? That's what Jim Harbaugh does. Why? Makes it easy on the quarterback. I love Rome Odunze. Was a stud in college. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. Everyone that interviewed him and scouted him, high character guy, leader. He's a badass. I'd want him on my team every day of the week and twice on Sundays. But after watching that game against the Houston Texans, where Caleb Williams was absolutely getting destroyed, and let's face it, there are some question marks with the Bears. If Jim Harbaugh had, in some other world, been the head coach of the Bears in this draft, and they take Caleb Williams number 1, who do you think they take at 9? I know who they don't take, and that's Rome Odunze. Now, what offensive lineman he liked the most after J.C. Latham and Joe Alt, I don't know. I don't have his draft board. but he would have taken an offensive lineman. And I saw Baldinger today tweet out, as he does, these videos of guys that are having a lot of success, like the all 22 tape. And Fuaga, the first round pick by the Saints from Oregon State, was a super high end prospect. He was a guy, I would say, pretty universally viewed as a top 15 pick. He's their starting left tackle, but he can play guard. He could probably play all 5 positions. I don't know if he's ever going to be Trent Williams, like super all-star. I mean, this is the talk before the draft, but he was viewed as like, this guy's not going to suck. And he's been awesome through 2 weeks. And I wonder if the Bears could get a do-over. They just would have taken him because could have played him at left tackle. You could have played him at left guard. You just probably should have taken an offensive lineman. And they feel good about Rome, I'm sure. But I think football has shown us something. When you get an opportunity to take a high-end offensive lineman, like it was a luxury because of the trade to have the 2 picks in the top 10. And I think looking back, it's just a mistake. And I think Harbaugh's on to something. Can never have enough good offensive linemen. Look at the game on Monday night. Those 2 teams have really good offensive lines. Why? They've invested a lot of capital in that position. Because it matters. I watch way too much 49ers and focusing on their offensive line. And Kyle's philosophy is we will take skill guys over offensive linemen. And I don't know, man. Like, I hear it when we're talking a center, but when you get a guy that can play right or left tackle, I would take that guy every day of the week over a wide receiver because I can find a wide receiver later. It is hard to find tackles outside of the top couple rounds. And even when you do, you see Andy Reid, like, there's a lot of growing pains. They're starting a left tackle who they drafted at the end of the second round, and it's going to be a long season for him. Now, over the course of his career, maybe he develops into a Pro Bowl level player, but he's going to get his lunch taken a lot this season. But invest in the offensive line. They will not regret it in 2 or 3 years if that guy's a high-end player. It's 100% the right pick. Before we dive into college football, Brian Flores, who is just, I think when you factor in that D'Amico's a head coach, Fangio might be losing his fastball. I'm trying to think of other high-end. Sala definitely is not even a DC as the head coach. But that Brian Flores is the best defensive coordinator in the league. And if what he's doing on defense was on offense, we would be discussing him like Clint Kubiak or Andy Reid or Kyle Shanahan. Like, you get a lot more brownie points on offense than you do on defense. But Brian Flores is elite. And after the Niner game, Purdy went up to him and was like, your scheme's crazy, man. I had no clue where anything was coming from. And Flores kind of this old school hard ass, barely even acknowledged him, just walked right off. And even Kyle was mentioning it today in his conference call, or maybe it was Monday, how awesome that scheme is because of all the different exotic stuff he can run. Gets back to the Belichick days. They don't have a scheme. They can do everything. It's like, do they just play zone? No, they can play man too. They'll blitz all the time. Well, if that's not working, they won't blitz. Like Vic Fangio, what's the knock on him? Never blitzes. He just won't blitz. It's like I'm not a huge believer, like, and it's really difficult to do what Bill does because most people can't learn all this stuff. Like it's a lot to handle. It's like, what's your scheme? Yeah, we don't really have one. We just do whatever we have to do against that specific offense. I do wonder because Brian Flores, from a football standpoint, you're not schematics on the field debate how elite of an assistant coach he is. Like when the dust settles at the end of the year, offense and defense, he'll be a top 3 or 4 coordinator. And there's a chance if Minnesota's just good this year, you could argue, we'll see how if Clint Kubiak can keep this up. Like he's the best coordinator, offense or defense, non-head coach in the NFL. I do think it's going to be hard to shake that Tua thing. Because like, yeah, okay, you're a great defensive coordinator. You can get the defense rolling. That happened in Miami. Their defense was good. If I was a GM or I was an owner, it's like, can this guy deal with quarterbacks? And I don't think he's going to be able to answer that question. And that's going to be something that's going to be really hard to overcome. Because, listen, is Tua worth the contract they gave him? I never believed that from the start. But once he's on your team, your success is tied to that position. And as the head coach, you have to change that mentality from this hard-ass defensive guy to like, I need this guy to succeed. In my job, this guy's going to be the highest paid guy in the organization. We just used the 5th overall pick on this player. I got to be able to communicate with him. I got to be able to have a close relationship with him. Doesn't mean I can't coach him hard. Doesn't mean I have to go to dinner with him 3 times a week. But like our relationship, our success is incumbent on this player. Like the reason the Vikings are winning, obviously their defense is good with Flores. It's because fucking Sam Darnold. If you just gave him Will Levis, they'd be 0-2. So like the quarterback, and why does Kevin O'Connell get so much credit and held to such high esteem? He can deal with quarterbacks. So Flores is a badass defensive coordinator. He's elite. But when we talk about being a head coach, because his name's going to come up as this season goes, if they keep having success, it's hard for me to shake that situation when you can't deal with, by far, the most important player on the team. Okay, Kauff on campus, which I can't imagine being on as a student because I don't know how much money you'd have to pay me to attend a class. I can't imagine doing homework, taking tests. So props to everyone that's in school right now that is doing homework and taking tests because that's hard. Number 1, Kauff on campus. We got a sweet game this week, like an incredible game on paper. Oklahoma, Tennessee. Now, Oklahoma, they're in the top 15, but they got a lot of injuries. They have not been that great this season, but they're playing in Norman, Oklahoma. And Tennessee looks like, could they be a sleeper national champion team? They just played Kent State, beat them like 700-0. But to me, the cool part about this game, Bob Stoops put out a tweet at the beginning of the week that said, I will not be doing interviews. Why would he do that? Well, Venables, the coach at Oklahoma, was his assistant for 13 years. Josh Heupel was the quarterback for the Oklahoma team that won Bob Stoops' national championship and then became a coach and later became his offensive coordinator, who Bob Stoops ended up firing. And he kind of fired Venables too, / pushed him out when he made his brother after Mike Stoops was fired from Arizona where Nick Foles was playing and came back to Oklahoma. So they have this weird connected tissue here of all these coaches. And Josh Heupel, who you get some different reviews from scouting buddies that have gone through his programs over the year, big chip on his shoulder guy. Now, he was a lowly recruited guy who really only Mike Leach believed in, who went on to become a national championship college quarterback and become a really, really good college coach. Has a potential to become maybe a top 5 coach if Tennessee this year is like in the Final Four. But we finally are getting these Oklahoma and Texas SEC games, and it's going to be really fun. And this game, the hype between Venables and Josh Heupel, for years in practice as the OC and the DC in the 2000s and early 2010s went against each other every day in practice. I can't imagine how much time these two humans have spent together in staff meetings, in staff recruiting trips, just around each other on the field, workouts. Like, these guys know each other really, really well. And it's all connected with Bob, who is like the spokesman for the university. So very, very excited for this game on Saturday. Will Arch Manning ever give back his starting spot? Quinn Ewers just randomly gets injured. It was a non-contact injury against, I think they were playing UTSA. I was not even planning on watching the game. And then I see on the internet, Arch Manning's in the game. So I immediately turn on the game. Now, let me say this. The game against Michigan, whether you were in on Quinn Ewers or not, you could not watch that game and not say, they can win a national championship with this player, and he's clearly a high-end NFL prospect. So he's really good. Like, I watched him last year. I wasn't sold as some top 10 pick, as some guy that just was some lock you could win the Natty with. the guy that he had become this year. I'm not saying he didn't have moments, but that game at Michigan, I was like, I'm in. From a consumer standpoint, from a fan basis standpoint, from a national standpoint, it's a tough spot for Quinn Ewers because no one wants to see him play when that's his backup. If his backup was Arch Middlekauff, it would not be the same. Hey, he's the number one overall recruit. He's getting paid a bunch of NIL. It'd be like, when Quinn is ready, go back to him. But what do? They don't know how long he's going to miss, but let's just say he misses the next 2 games. They play, I think, Louisiana Monroe and then Mississippi State, which they'll probably blow both those 2 teams out. What if he's ready to go heading into the Oklahoma game? Because they go back-to-back Oklahoma and then Georgia. And even if Texas is a lot better than Oklahoma, that's why you play at Texas, to play in that game. How do you bench that player? And Arch is going to say all the right things. He would gladly go back. But I think this is a tough spot for Sark. And at this point, if Arch is rolling and Quinn's like, yeah, he could go this week, I wonder what happens. I really do. Because this is not a position where it's not like Quinn was going to come back to school after this year. He's gone. So I do think that makes the decision easier. And I think if Arch is running around throwing a bunch of touchdowns and they just look exactly like they've done with Quinn, I'd be a little stunned if they went back to him. And the shitty part for Quinn, who looked like he was about to have a massive season, become like probably win the Heisman Trophy. I don't think anyone wants to see him again. Florida State. Did we jinx Florida State? I think that is the question. We had on my guy, Derek Ray, who is the GM. They had just gone 13-1. They have not won a game. And they have looked terrible. And the problem for them is they play Cal this week. Cal is 3-0. Their superstar running back, who's a top 50 pick if he's healthy, has been banged up, barely played. But their quarterback has been awesome. As of today, Cal is better than Florida State. If you go 0-4, even if Cal is better than you, like they've already lost to worse teams than Cal. But if you lose this team from Berkeley with a lot of weird shit going on, and they roll into Tallahassee and beat you and kind of beat your ass, which is very possible, like shove you around by 10 plus points, things are going to get weird, and they're going to get weird fast there. Now, Mike Norvell, his buyout's like $65 million. He doesn't deserve, even with a terrible season, to get fired. College football is crazy, man. It really is. It's what have you done for me lately? And he, rightfully so, is going to take a lot of shit for DJ. Because DJ, he doesn't even look like a Division I starter. Not even remotely close. He's one of the worst players I've watched this season at quarterback in college football. He's like unplayable. You can't function with the guy. So you lose to Cal, things are clearly already weird. It starts getting really weird really fast. This is just an awesome game. Even if Michigan is down and they just started Orgy, the quarterback, who can't really throw, but he can run, and USC, we don't know quite how good they are, but USC, Michigan, this is why, and my fifth one is the conference realignment. They kind of tie into each other. I miss the Pac-12. It sucks. Texting with my cousin who played at Fresno State, we were texting a lot about like how anticlimactic is it that Fresno State finally gets invited to the Pac-12, where they've been dying to get in for 30 years, and it feels like a shittier deal than just staying in the Mountain West. Because you can call, I could call this podcast Apple Incorporated or Nike. I'm not Nike or Apple. You can call it the Pac-12, but the moment USC and UCLA left, it died. It's over. You don't have a valuable property. No one cares about Corvallis and Pullman, Washington, in terms of like, these networks aren't lining up to give you more money. Your value is your value, and it's not very high. The value of the Pac-12 was in USC, was in UCLA, was in Oregon, was in Washington. They don't exist. Salt Lake City's in the Big 12. Colorado's in the Big 12. The Arizona schools are never coming back. You're done. It's over. And it's sad. It makes me sad still. But it happened, and I got to embrace it. So you get USC Michigan. I'm not like some SEC guy because I grew up on the West Coast, but like Texas Georgia being a conference game is pretty cool. Oklahoma Tennessee being a conference game is pretty cool. And USC Michigan, even if it's not the Harbaugh led national champions, it's not the same. That's sweet. And it doesn't feel normal. It doesn't. Like Oregon playing Ohio State and saying that's a conference game is weird. It just is. UCLA playing Rutgers as a conference game is weird. But you just got to embrace it. There's one school watching Arizona, Kansas State last week. It was like, you know what Arizona does? Feels like a Big 12 school. They really do. They are probably the lone school that has made this transition. You're like, that completely fits. You can say Colorado because they used to be in the conference, but like they've been in the Pac-12 for a while now. I've gotten used to seeing Colorado play Oregon, Washington State, Cal, like those games. Like I kind of got used to it. I forget when I was a kid in Colorado, I was playing the Texas A&Ms and Nebraskas, right? So like my mind, like to me, Arizona, they feel right at home in the Big 12. USC, Michigan feels a little weird as a conference game. Oklahoma, Georgia, or Texas, Florida as a conference game, like that's a little weird. It just is. But we're now in the conference play, and we're going to get a lot of these. You know, it's just going to be part of our weekly Saturdays where it's like Nebraska's playing Washington for a conference game. Like, yeah, that's what happens. That's where we're at. So let's enjoy it.